All right, here we go. So let's talk about the 68, 95, 99.7 rule of statistics. So take some notes. So this is generally speaking, okay? Generally speaking, we're gonna get more specific in the next lesson, okay? But generally speaking, like you're at a party and you just happen to be talking about statistics, okay? When data is normally distributed, it tends to follow the 68, 95, 99.7 rule of statistics, which says essentially approximately 68% of data falls within one standard deviation either way of the average, which is right there, that white line in the middle. Okay, approximately 95, I know it says 95.4, but just round down to 95. About 95% of the data falls within two standard deviations of average, and 99.7% of the data falls within three standard deviations of average. Okay, that only leaves 0.3% that doesn't. Okay, generally speaking, when data is normally distributed. Okay, so this would mean, if we really break this down, okay, so if it's 68% within one standard deviation of average, that means it's 34% and 34%, right? 34 plus 34 makes the 68. Okay, and then 95% falls within two standard deviations. So if we take that remaining 27% and split that equally, that's 13.5 and 13.5. And then 95 subtracted from 99.7 is 4.7. So 4.7 divided by 2 is 2.35. Okay. And so with that, let's answer some questions, keeping that in mind. So what percent would you expect to fall below -2 standard deviations? Okay, and so if you just look at that, right, you're going to get the 2.5 because it's the 2.35 plus the 0.15 of the outliers, okay, slightly outside. Okay, what percent is below average, below mu? 50%, 50% above, 50% below. What percent is below 2.0 standard deviations? 97.5. What percent is above 1.0? Okay, so the 13.5 plus the 2.35 plus the 0.15, which is our outliers on the high end. Okay, that's 16% approximately. And what percent is above minus 1.0? So that's the 34, 34, 13.5, 2.35, and the 0.15. That's 84%. Okay, so this brings us to our we problem. So let's just say that on average, 50 students ditch fifth period unexcused with a standard deviation of 3. Okay, assuming that this data is normally distributed, let's answer some questions. Okay, so what percent is less, or what's the probability that on some random day there's going to be less than 53 students? So 53 falls right on, +1 standard deviation away. So less than that, that's going to be 84%. Okay, so what is the probability that there's going to be more than that? Well, it's going to be 100 minus the 84, right? So it's 16%. And then more than 41 kids, so that falls right on -3 standard deviations away. Okay, so it's pretty high likelihood, right? 99.85%. Okay, so let's try this you all problem. Okay, go ahead and give it a shot. Okay, here it is. What's the probability that on some randomly selected day at El Segundo, we find that there's between 44 to 59 students? So maybe try sketching out your normal curve and see if you can answer this one. If you did it correctly, you should be getting about 97.35%. All right, good luck. Get to the practice.